court is in session, Daredevil presiding.
Hello Rivals fans, and welcome back to the Rivals Report, the show that gets you up to speed on Rivals esports news in a nice, bite-sized package. My name is Diatonic, and this is the Rivals Report number 20 for the week of October 13th, 2025. On this week's report, Ignite Stage 2 has finally reached its conclusion with the Americas playoffs being held this past weekend. Find out who won and who's headed to DreamHack Atlanta in our after-action report. We're also catching up on some previous Ignite results with a full Asia playoffs breakdown as well. And a powerhouse EMEA org is hosting a big invitational tournament. Find out who's involved and what it could mean for the future of the EMEA Rivals space. Also, it's back to school as the Collegiate Rivals series is back in action. 2 weeks of their fall splitter in the books, and we've got some highlights for you. Well, Stage 2 of Ignite is finally drawn to a close with the conclusion of the Americas playoffs this past week. NA has really stepped their game up since Stage 1, leading into a hotly contested playoff bracket and a brutal battle for the Final Four DreamHack Atlanta invites. But with an even tighter field of competition than back in Stage 1, the road through playoffs has become that much harder. FlyQuest continued to show newfound strength in the playoff opener match against Team Nemesis. There were signs of life from NEM throughout this series, but FlyQuest found every answer they needed to take a 3-0 first win in playoffs. Dark Zero were paired against Rad next, but DZ's new core continues to prove themselves a worthy challenge as they defeat Rad 3-0. The powerhouses of Envy and Sentinels squared off in the next match of the night. Sentinels have been a bit shaky this stage, especially considering they have a couple new members and a new coach, but they haven't quite found the flow as they take a tough 3-1 loss to Envy. And finally, 100 Thieves took on Dreamland in the last match of Night 1. Dreamland have looked incredibly clean throughout this tournament, and they pushed Thieves at several points throughout this series, but after dropping map 1, 100 Thieves would go on to win it 3-1. 2 elimination matches and 2 LAN qualifier matches were on the card for the second night of playoffs. Nemesis and Rad kicked things off with a battle for survival here, with Nem knocking Rad out the tournament 2-0. Sentinels were looking to get back in the saddle in an elim match with Dreamland, one that would show Sentinels in peak form with a 2-0 win. In the first LAN qualifier match of playoffs, FlyQuest would go up against Dark Zero, and it'd be FlyQuest redeeming their Stage 1 performance with a decisive 3-0 victory, making them the first NA team qualified for DreamHack Atlanta. And in the other LAN deciding match, a solid-looking 100 Thieves would take on one of the tournament favorites, Envy. Envy would give them a run for their money, even managing to snag a map for themselves, but the Thieves would steal their invite to Atlanta here, besting Envy 3-1. Tap solo, less than 1 meter to go, and there it is! 100 Thieves are going to Atlanta! And the first 2 matches of Night 3 raised the stakes even higher. The winning team advanced to LAN, and the losing team went home. Envy faced off with Team Nemesis, and Envy would add yet another notch to their belt with a 3-0 win here, locking in their LAN invite. Dark Zero and Sentinels would rematch yet again in the second high-stakes match of the night. Sentinels put up a fight in this series from start to finish, but it'd be DZ triumphing yet again, winning and getting their DreamHack invite 3-2.
We baited the Jeff ban with a Star-Lord save because we weren't planning to play Jeff and we wanted to play Hulk no more, and we knew that they wanted to play Cap, right? We just wanted to play something like really, really difficult for them to dive and something really difficult for them to initiate on.
To decide the first team competing in the Stage 2 Grand Finals, FlyQuest would look to end the 100 Thieves heist, but no such luck here as the Thieves would clinch Grand Finals 3-1.
What are you guys gonna say now? Come on! Wow, Kalush, I'll be waiting for you up here, bro. Hope you make it up here.
And for the last match of the night, we'd get FlyQuest's opponents for the lower bracket finals with Envy battling Dark Zero. Try as they might, but not even their new signings of Korova and Rye Mason could make the difference here, and Envy would win 3-0. And this was it, the final night of Ignite Stage 2 as a whole, as Envy would face off with FlyQuest in the lower bracket finals, with 100 Thieves waiting the victor in Grand Finals. But it was a tough bout for Fly, who've been mostly dominant throughout Stage 2. FlyQuest opened strong, taking a contested win on Celestial Husk, but that was all Envy would give them, as they'd advance to Grand Finals with a 3-1 win. And it all came down to this, the final confrontation between the 2 currently strongest teams in the region, Envy and 100 Thieves. But the Thieves were ready and waiting, kicking off with a nail-biter win on Hell's Heaven. Envy would battle back to win Yggdrasil Path in extra rounds, but that was all Envy would manage to snag. The Thieves would complete their heist here, closing out with 3 back-to-back wins, including perhaps the wildest symbiotic surface match I've ever seen. And that rounds out the second stage of Ignite competition for the Americas region, with 100 Thieves being crowned the Stage 2 champions. Sentinels are out, but in their place, FlyQuest and Dark Zero make history by earning their spots in the first ever Ignite Grand Finals LAN tournament. It'll be interesting to see how these new teams enter the global mix and where NA's place in the overall picture is. Again, that LAN tournament will be happening at DreamHack Atlanta, kicking off on October 31st. In addition to coverage of the Americas playoffs, we want to catch up on our Ignite reporting and bring you some results and highlights from the Asia playoffs as well. The competition in the Asia region has been pretty fierce, and a web of rivalries between some of its powerhouse teams is growing. But who made the cut to DreamHack? The first day of playoffs opened with a banger match, with Crazy Raccoon taking on Zero Tenacity. It was an insanely close intergroup matchup between these two, but Crazy Raccoon would lock in on Krakoa for the final map and win it 3-2. Gen G took on Onside Gaming next, and things were rough for Gen G at first, but they'd catch up at a breakneck pace in the back half of the series. XOXO01 and Down Payment win head-to-head next, and this would be EXO's match to win, finishing it with a solid 3-1 over Down Payment. And finally for day one, the Stage 1 Asia champs Reject were up against Incipients, and Reject would clean house with the only 3-0 win of the day. Day 2 began with a battle for tournament survival between Zero Tenacity and Onside Gaming. They'd need all 5 maps to decide it, but it would be ONG going home in the end, falling victim to Z10 3-2. Down Payment were back at the plate in an elimination match against Incipients next. But Down Payment turned up the heat here and eliminated Incipients for the tourney in a 3-0 sweep. On the upper bracket side, Asia powerhouses Crazy Raccoon and Gen G would do battle, and in the dramatic fight between these titans, it'd be Gen G emerging victorious in a big 3-2 win. And for the final match of the night, Old Faces would collide as Reject went up against XOXO01, but Reject would continue yet another upper bracket tear with a 3-1 win. The penultimate day of Asia playoffs gave us nothing but bangers from top to bottom, and it all started with Zero Tenacity taking on XOXO01. This series would go the distance as well, and it'd be EXO coming out on top of the close 3-2 finish. Crazy Raccoon and Down Payment would play out the other lower bracket quarterfinals, but Crazy Raccoon would keep their LAN hopes alive by cashing out a 3-1 win. Gen G were out for revenge against Reject in the upper bracket finals, but Reject would take the dub here 3-1, making Reject the first Asia team to qualify for the Grand Finals LAN tournament. In the final match of the night, Crazy Raccoon and XOXO01 would fight for a spot in the lower bracket finals against Gen G. And it'd be Crazy Raccoon punching their ticket forward, sending EXO home 3-1. And on the final day of Asia Stage 2, we were set for 2 massive matchups. First, Crazy Raccoon and Gen G would go to war in the lower bracket finals to decide the second and last LAN invite. Crazy Raccoon pulled absolutely no punches, dealing Gen G a 3-0 win that sent them on to face Reject and locked in their LAN invite. And then there were the Stage 2 Grand Finals, with Stage 1 champs Reject looking for another stage win and Crazy Raccoon looking for an upset. It was a battle of a swinging pendulum, with Crazy Raccoon winning the first 3 maps, followed by a 3-map rally from Reject. The 7th and final map would go all the way, but Crazy Raccoon would take Celestial Husk on the final capture point and become the Asia Stage 2 champions.
So everyone on Crazy Raccoon able to go absolutely crazy here, as this might be the breaking point here, and X with the Galactic Legend forcing everyone away as the Raccoons decide that now is the time to go absolutely rabid.
And with that, Stage 2 of Marvel Rivals Ignite finally draws to a close. LAN invites have all been distributed, and we turn our attention to Atlanta, Georgia, where the final Ignite event of the year will be held, the Grand Finals Tournament. The Rivals Report will be on location during the tournament to bring you on-the-ground coverage throughout the entire event, as well as a very special Rivals Report to follow. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a second of our pre-LAN coverage, and follow me across all platforms so you can follow our journey through this historic moment. And a major EMEA esports org is looking to potentially get back into Rivals in a big way, holding a multi-stage invitational tournament over the past couple of weeks. Enter Fnatic Assembled, a tournament named after and operated by legendary org Fnatic, backed by Red Bull as well. But before we talk about how the tournament works and what's at stake, let's first take a look at Fnatic's involvement in Marvel Rivals up to now. Fnatic actually fielded a Rivals roster back during the Marvel Rivals Invitational. They brought some heavy hitters to the table, players that are still active in the competitive space even now. They signed players that would go on to compete as recently as Ignite Stage 2, including Blacks, Line Pro, Monk Mutta, and even recent Citadel transfer Melio. But this was a short-lived endeavor, finishing in 3rd place in the Invitational before disbanding the team. Since then, all has been quiet on the Fnatic Rivals front. At least until the recent announcement of the upcoming Fnatic Assembled tournament over on X. This tournament is designed to be a 3-stage event consisting of an open qualifier, a group stage, and a finals to be played at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London. 4 teams have been invited to the group stage, while 2 teams were qualified for the event through the open qualifiers. Both qualifying teams have some familiar faces on them. The first of which is Rivals Elite, a team consisting of players like Ashe and X-Sooty from X-Oblivion, Pinclone from L9, and more. The other qualifying team is Planet X Pals, better known as the core members of Fragging Friends, a team we've featured on the Rivals Report before. They've also added Blaziken to their ranks, a former member of X-Oblivion as well. And the invited teams are filled with familiar faces too. First, they invited a team called Final Dance, a conglomerate of players from FaZe, Vice, and even Milkboy from Alcacia. Foot Esports and OG Seed were also invited in their normal capacities, and rounding out the field is Fnatic. Fnatic have lent their banner to the roster of Insomnia for this tournament, just so the org itself could have a place in the tournament as well. After day one of the group stage, Final Dance led Group A, just barely ahead of Fnatic in the standings after defeating them in the first match of the day. Foot Esports were the leaders in Group B, having won both of their matches against OG Seed and Planet X Pals. But day 2 presented some problems in the standings. Where Final Dance 2-0'd Fnatic on day 1, Fnatic flipped the script on them on day 2. Same for Foot and OG Seed, where Foot won their first encounter, but OG won the second. It was such a tight race that both groups needed to employ tiebreakers to determine who would be going to LAN. Foot took on OG in the Group B tiebreaker round. This was the decider, and Foot would deliver a decisive victory here, defeating OG on both Celestial Husk and Yggdrasil Path to confirm their spot for LAN in London. Fnatic and Final Dance would have one last dance in the Group A tiebreaker, but this would truly be a heartbreaker for the Fnatic squad. They dominated on the first map, but Final Dance slowly caught up to them in the back half of the series and would eventually capture a LAN invite away from Fnatic in a 2-1 win. Fnatic Assembled marches on this coming weekend, with Foot and Final Dance gearing up for a trip to London to decide the finals. Fnatic and OG will also be playing out a third place match, though not on LAN as far as we're able to tell. Either way, the question now becomes, is Fnatic planning to re-enter the rival space? Was this just a test run to see what kind of talent is out there and do some scouting? Only time will tell, but we'll bring you a report from the Fnatic Assembled finals on next week's Rivals Report. And finally this week, fall is in the air, and that means it's back to school time, as the world of collegiate competitive Marvel Rivals is getting back into full swing. There's a number of leagues firing up this season, and teams all across the country are bringing their best to bear, including signing some pro players. But of all the collegiate leagues in operation, the one that puts emphasis on Marvel Rivals is, of course, the Collegiate Rivals Series. I've been back in the booth for the first 2 weeks of action, and I'm here to catch you up on the happenings in the Collegiate Rivals world. The CRS Fall Split is divided into 2 phases. The regular season that runs for 8 weeks of Swiss play, and the playoffs, a double elimination bracket with a $2,500 prize pool on the line. But teams competing in the fall season have also entered into a race for championship points. Across both the fall and spring splits, teams will be vying to earn these points alongside the prize pools, with the top 8 championship point teams being invited to the Grand Championship LAN tournament in mid-April. The first broadcast match of Week 1 was the defending CRS Summer Champs FIU Panthers taking on Rutgers. While we may have been expecting to see a big Panthers win here, this was a wild back and forth between these two teams. Rutgers would push this series all the way to a map 3, and the Scarlet Knights would eventually go on to win a big season-opening upset against the Panthers. The second matchup would pit Legacy University Esports program St. Clair Saints up against the University of Iowa. It was a close game, especially the second map of Yggdrasil Path, but University of Iowa would eventually reign supreme here with a 2-0 win to start their season. For Week 2, we had Summer Split returners Matadors Black going up against newcomer team NC State, both 1-0 after the first week of competition. While this match ended up being 2-0 favoring the Matadors, NC State certainly gave them a run for their money, putting up numbers and making plays all series long. The second and last match of the broadcast were 2 newcomer teams, the USC Cardinals taking on EVC's Hawk Gaming. The Hawks brought some unorthodox strategies to the table, at times opting for triple duelist or triple strategist with just a single Vanguard. But their fundamentals were lacking, and the Cards were able to put the hurt on the Hawks with a 2-0. The fall split of the Collegiate Rivals Series is just getting started, with 6 more weeks of Swiss play on the calendar before they move into playoffs. Be sure to follow the league's X account for clips and standings updates, and be sure to check them out on Twitch every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the week's featured matches. As always, links are in the description. Well, that's all for this week's Rivals Report. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest in Marvel Rivals Esports. And be sure to follow me on other platforms including Twitch, X, and TikTok. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in-game.